Chance Hymas looking at a 4-1 to win RedBud. This is the biggest gap in any moto this year. Chase Sexton sweeps RedBud.
Well, thanks for coming on, Davey. Welcome to the Title 24 show presented by NBC Sports. And just want to say thank you to our great sponsors, Dunlop, Boxo, United Motorsports, Quadlock. Yeah, thank you, Davey. Once again, our good buddy RC back on vacation, having some good times with the kids. And we called you in for another favor. So thanks for doing it again, Davey.
No worries. I imagine Gypsy was busy.
No, man, you were the first one you were the first call, buddy. You were the first one. So you're the A-team roster.
Well, thank you. It's always a pleasure to bench race with you. And I'm looking forward to doing one of these with the GOAT at some point, but I'll take the 9 and get the 15 later.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. So big weekend. I think probably it's got to be one of our biggest races, probably the best one to go to from a fan's perspective. RedBud, Buchanan, Michigan. Man, just from what I saw, was it a packed house? It was crazy. Fans, I mean, I don't think there's any better motocross or supercross fans available or that we see. But you get it at RedBud, man. It's crazy. Fill us in on how the weekend was from a fan's perspective and lots of people, it looked like.
Well, yeah. Now, first of all, Ryan, I should admit I wasn't there by the luck of the draw. My sister went, and I got to spend July 4th getting ready for Loretta Lynn's and finishing a magazine deadline. So I devoured it on Peacock and obviously on NBC and all the pre-shows and actually all the post shows too. It was a massive crowd. And you know, RedBud, we always say, is the centerpiece of the series, and year after year it delivers. And I think that Amy and Tim Ritchie, you know, picking up the legacy from their parents, have done an amazing job. I think it gets better by the year. And you know, with the racing we've had this year and the storylines in both classes, that looked to me like the biggest RedBud ever. And I would put it up there with the Motocross of Nations that they had there. Just massive event.
I would have to agree. Very, very packed house. Just the facility itself at RedBud. I mean, it's pristine. It's very picturesque. When they fly the drone around the track, man, it just from an overhead shot is one of the most beautiful probably tracks out there. So thank you to the RedBud, you know, facilities, Amy and Tim. But we're going to jump right into this with big news. Obviously, heartbreaker for probably a lot of fans, a lot of Jett fans. Man, the thumbs this season have been an issue. We see Cooper Webb with a thumb. We see Eli with a thumb. And now we have Jett with a UCI tear in his thumb and pulled him out of the season. So very interesting. What's your take on that, Davey? How do you feel about that?
I think this Bennett's fracture, these thumb injuries are the new Epstein-Barr. It's the go-to unfortunate, you know, I always say bad things happen in threes. In this case, fours, if you count Romain Fabure, the Kawasaki MXGP star. But yeah, my heart sunk when I got the call from Lucas Myrtle that Jett was hurt. We gotten so used to Jett being there and being up front, and you never thought, like, even after his big crash at Hangtown, you never thought, you know, that he would go down with something like that, or that it would happen. But, you know, unfortunately it did. And the weird thing about it, Ryan, I had just finished doing comparing 450 starts between guys like you and the other Ryan and Ricky and James, and having with Jett Lawrence won 15 of his first 16 450 nationals. So he's batting like if he were a baseball player, like 930%.
Yeah.
And
sure.
But it was never a runaway. And he just always seemed to manage these wins and these motos and these streaks. And now it's a whole new season. And we saw that on Saturday.
Yeah, it really is. It's a bummer to see. Obviously, like you said, Eli and Jett and
Cooper.
You know, Cooper. Yep, Cooper. We heard that it was a small crash during the week, nothing crazy. You know, it's a bummer that a small crash like that during the week takes a guy out of a championship, you know, with a points lead and with, you know, fighting for that position. And when we saw a crash like at Hangtown, right? Like this big catastrophic, you know, dismount, you know, barely finished that moto, gets up, but is fine, gets on the motorcycle, finishes the moto, but then he has a tip over during the week. It's part of our sport. We all hate to see it. But you know, like I do think that being in that position, winning, I think he was basically 7 championships in a row already at a very early stage of his career. Underneath that limelight is probably more than anybody for sure. This probably, you know, it's a gut check for sure for him, but I also think it might be like a, you know, almost a blessing in disguise where he can just kind of get back home, chill, not have to, you know, put in those days of during the week and the weekend and, you know, day in and day out. It's a bit of a reset, I think. And I think that's, in the longevity of his racing career, I think that'll help him.
Yeah. And you would know that, Ryan, you know, you had a couple big ones that put you on the sideline but you came back better each time. And yeah, exactly. I love to remind people at the end of your career, your last 4 Supercrosses, you led every lap. It was like the ultimate walk-off, you know, and I think that it was because you were able to rest during those injuries to continue to, you know, keep your mind healthy. And when it was time to go, it was time to go. And with Jett, though, and this is the world we live in, you know, it started out, it was a thumb injury. And then the next day it's a shoulder injury. And by the end of the week, he's pregnant, you know. And it's just the world we live in now. And he did that, you know, the video that I think we're going to have a look at where he just, you know, all shucks, this is what happened. And it was refreshing to see that he wasn't beating himself up or anything. He seemed like pretty happy to be sitting on that couch.
Yep, for sure. Well, that just segue right into the, you know, we'll get to the 450s here towards the middle to the end of the show. We're going to jump right into the 250 Boxo breakdown. You know, my overall view, and we'll get yours also from the weekend, was not much different. Haiden Deegan just doing Haiden Deegan things, really putting on a show, really riding phenomenal. You know, probably not the best weekend for him. Obviously late moto crash. I think Hector has that for us to check out. And then we'll segue off into some other, you know, what, you know, how the rider went down and things like that. But yeah, we're watching right here, Vial and Masterpool right here. Both of them just barely missed that downed rider going over the bars. Look at Vial. Just, I mean, man, if it was 10 inches over to the left more, I think Vial would have been collected with that motorcycle. Now we have Haiden coming in at the forward shot here. Rider gets off the track. Hayden's in the air, just lands basically probably 12 inches from that motorcycle and rode right into it, flips him over the bars pretty dramatically. You know, all I can say is in a scenario like that is man, there was a little bit of luck involved there, you know, meaning from an injury standpoint. You know, when you hit a motorcycle going that speed, coming out of the air like that, you know, just, we all know that crashes are, you know, something that we don't want to see or to see happen in this sport. But man, it's like a rubber band. He jumps right up, gets back on the motorcycle, visorless. I've done that a few times, by the way, in my 250 career, visorless, and then finishes it out, you know. So that was a very, very, you know, critical moment right there of, you know, bike could have had a problem. He could have had a problem with his body, with himself, but nonetheless, he was able to finish. You know, that was pretty spectacular.
Well, first of all, I am wildly impressed by the durability and the resilience of Haiden. I remember his crash at Hangtown where he did the helicopter whirly bird. He's got a Ricky type ability to survive these crashes relatively unscathed. unfortunately, the rider whose bike he hit, who's actually a privateer from Minnesota named Bailey Kroon, he, at first we thought that his brake caliber or something had come apart, but we found out later in talking to Bailey that he hit a false neutral on the face of that jump. And he had a kicker too, and he was upside down and going through the bars before he knew it. Unfortunately, the kid broke his leg. And the reason he did not go scrambling right after the bike is, well, he has a broken leg. I talked to him this morning at length. He's still going to come out to Spring Creek and watch, but he's super bummed. But you know, it was one of those things. That said, there's so much to learn from a crash like this, and so much also to put it into perspective. If you watch the video, there's a lot of people complaining about the flaggers in the landing zone. They're just standing there. The context of it is those guys are flagging the next section, the guy on the far outside. You'll see Rod Yenser, who's one of our guys that works with the promoters on various track conditions and whatnot. As soon as he saw that bike go down, he goes riding up the side of the jump towards the guy with the blue flag. And that right there was the mistake. The blue flag official, who is an AMA official, one of 10 of them out there, should have been looking at the landing and not looking at who to throw the blue flag at. You know, Haiden would have had about 3 seconds from, you know, if you watch Matt Burkeen's video, he also had a different angle of it. And when you hear the fans start oohing and you know, and then, you know, start a stopwatch to when Haiden is at the base of that jump, it's about 3 seconds. And by the base, I mean the takeoff. So there wasn't a lot of time to do anything. But nonetheless, those guys are not going to have both a blue flag and the trigger for the lights. And that's the other thing people don't understand. There's lights on the face of that jump. That is a wheels on the ground area. And every rider, I think, after Haiden is on the ground because the lights are on. It's just that brief second. It's almost like an automobile accident. You see it coming, but you can't really do what you need to do. I talked to Haiden Deegan last night for about a half hour, just about various things. And he was just really glad. He saw it from, I think he was watching, he said in the Thor Tower. And he said that it was like time froze because he saw the bike and he knew Haiden was next. And he was just hoping that Haiden would go, you know, to the right side of the track. And instead he came down right on it. And man, it looked to me like he almost tried to bunny hop it or throttle through it. And it didn't work out, but you know, fortunately, he was safe. It's one of those things that you hate to see happen. Yeah, the guy behind him jumps it, but I don't think anyone else does because the lights are on.
Yeah, I mean, look, yeah, in that scenario, obviously, right before that takeoff, it was a super ruddy coming out of that horseshoe, coming down the hill into a right-hander into the takeoff of that jump. Not much space out of the turn there. For that, you're committed coming out of the turn. So, like you said, with flaggers, there is flaggers that were closer to the turn, but that's for the next section, and then we have the takeoff flaggers for that jump. And when things are happening so fast, especially, I saw and heard lappers were, and from what I saw, lappers, we haven't seen lappers like that on an outdoor track. Now, Supercross, it's very typical to have many lappers over the course of 20 minutes of a main event. But in motocross, it typically doesn't happen as bad. And I don't know if the top guys were just that much faster, that much better than say the guys out of the top 10 and wherever they lapped up to, you know what I mean? But it's part of the racing scenario where I'm going to say it kind of happens. There is a blue flag, there's yellow flags, there's red lights, there's wheels on the ground, there's all these things. But also some of that all has to come together at the right time too, just because, like we had Vial go through, we had Masterpool go through, and then literally, like you said, 3 seconds later, you had Haiden come through. So it's just kind of a bad luck of the draw. Yes, can flaggers be better? Can situation awareness be better? Obviously, always can be better. But believe me, I've flagged before people, and it is not very easy to flag because party is trying to watch the race and party is trying to make sure nobody's going down. And you know, so yeah, it was tough situation for Haiden to be in for sure.
Yeah. And this is what Brian and I talked about, you know, and there's gotta be some fixes. We've evolved, you know, we're in the 52nd year of the series, you know, and the same goes for Supercross, you know, and it's easier in Supercross because you could see 100% of the track. You have that sort of Oz character behind the curtain that can see everything, that can radio. RedBud is an incredibly difficult track to manage. As beautiful as it is, as great as it is, as many fans are surrounding it, you can only really see, if you're there, 1/3 of it at any given time. You're either watching the section where that happened, you're watching the section where Laraco's leap is, or you're watching the section where the start is.
Yeah.
You know, here's kind of the irony, Ryan. Jim Wells has been working with a MyLaps program called Race Control Manager, where it literally is a GPS on every bike. And if a bike comes to a sudden stop, it alerts the light in that section. And we used it for the WMX at High Point, and then they used it on Friday for the Moto Combine. And I know that after the event, Dan Fahey of Kawasaki went in the truck and was talking with Jim Wells, who's working on this program for us for a half hour. Very interested in it. It's a very, you know, like Brian said, we gotta figure out a way to make this better using communications, whether, you know, it's time to consider a radio in the helmet, which I personally am against, but I get it.
You're against comms?
Until they get to the point where you can give comms to one section of the track, because, you know, one of the things, I've been in this 10-year conversation with Jerry Masterpool about safety, and I have learned a great deal, and he's learned a great deal. And you know, I always appreciate the opinions, especially of a dad, because, you know, that a dad and a mom have a different eye for safety than you know, a rider, a promoter, really anyone.
Yeah.
And the thing is that sometimes when you come up with a fix, what you've done is just moved the situation somewhere else on the track. In the case of radio comms, let's say you're getting ready to blitz the whoops and you're leading the Seattle Supercross, and all of a sudden they yell, you know, over the radio, red flag, or not red flag, but rider down at the finish line. That doesn't involve you, but if that throws your concentration off, it could be a Ken Roxon situation where shock blew out. And so I think that as it gets more detailed and more specific, that's a great fix. I've been contacted by Larry Morton from, you know, the people from the Downey Safety Foundation. I had people ask about, you know, why not have a traveling crew of 50 flagmen to go to every race? Your race team never had more than 10 or 12 people on it, and you're funded by, you know, Kawasaki Corporation. I don't know that we can put 50 people on the road just to go flag, but we do have 10 people come to every event, and they are the flagging managers, the guys with the blue flags and the guys with the triggers. We didn't realize that we had this kind of an issue until, unfortunately, Bailey hits a false neutral and all the cameras are on him because he's being lapped. And we're lucky it wasn't worse. I feel bad for Bailey, like I said, but I'm just glad that it didn't compromise, you know, Hayden's season or Tom Vial's or, you know, Ty Masterpool's, and that we can all learn something from it. And I'll tell you one more thing about it, Ryan. I want to step in front of the bus that seems aimed at Jason Wygant and Ricky Carmichael and the TV crew, because they didn't show it. And this goes back to the setting. You know, the video that Hector showed are things that we saw on TikTok afterwards.
iPhone shots of the crash. Yeah. That's actually iPhone shots of the crash.
Yeah. And so, and you know this, when you're doing TV, you're not up in the press box at RedBud. You're in the trailer over by the TV compound, and you can only see what's on your screens.
Yep.
And, you know, to the credit of the person who was on the camera in the Monza corner, he caught the master pull and Vial near misses, but then he stayed with that battle as they came up the hill, and nobody saw. And then, and unfortunately, you know, because the number one priority is at that point, you know, Bailey, you know, number 249, who, you know, he's down on the track. No one's worried about letting TV know that Haiden Deegan crashed, and that's why he's 10 seconds behind. I know that Bondo and them will be trying to fix that and figure out a way, but where Jason Thomas and Will Christian were, the mechanics area is not in view of that section.
No, it's not.
And so no one was there to see it or to relay it. And the only reason Brian saw it and not anyone else on the team is because he was in the Thor center infield, you know,
which
tower.
is up on top of the hill, which has a view of the I don't know what you call it, mini Talladega turn or the Monza turn, and then that landing of that jump, and then you can flip around, you can see the sand rollers, Larocco's lead. Yes,
yeah, but you got to be up there.
You have to be. Yeah, he was about 40 feet off the ground in an aluminum structure, you know,
pirate's nest or whatever you call it, crow's nest.
Crow's
nest.
Anyway,
it was just a weird spot. It was not because he was getting lapped. It's because he went over the bars. But I did talk to Brian about, you know, his suggestion was maybe we limit, you know, a pro motocross national to 30 riders in the main event, or maybe we figure out that if after you go 3 laps down, you come off the track or whatever. Those are all ideas, but they all have other sides of the coin. So
I totally agree. I totally agree that you know, you're throwing stuff on a whiteboard, which is great. You got to get all your ideas out there so that, you know, we can pick the best one. We're going to move on to the United Motorsports moment of the week. Chance Hymas, big overall win for him. Went 4-1 on the day for the overall, his very first overall victory. And what a better place to do it at RedBud with the amount of fans. You know, I got every time I would race there, I can tell you, I promise you this, and the crowd wasn't this big. I think, to your point, Davey, I think this is probably one of the biggest RedBuds I've ever seen, close to MXON or matches MXON that they've had there at RedBud multiple times. But you get chills. I even get chills watching it on TV with the amount of people and the air horns and I think we even had a guy with a 3D target deer holding it up on the.
that's Evan the deer. He's an institution in Midwest motocross. That deer got more airtime than Tom Vial.
Yeah, exactly. So really big win for him. I'm sure. You know, that's something that, number one, he checked that box, getting his first win. But man, just the trajectory of him, you know, like got a moto win it at Colorado. He's been riding really well, like extraordinarily well. He's got the speed. He seems like the fitness now is really, I'm starting to see that towards the end of the motos, he's not really, you know, it wasn't a lot. It wasn't that he was falling off a lot, but just, if you fall off a little bit and you have somebody like Haiden Deegan coming from, you know, 5th or 4th, or, you know, coming through the pack in those last few laps, and he just chews you up. I'm seeing some better things from Chance, and that was just a huge weekend for him.
Yeah, I always like Chance. He, you know, he's not your basic quintessential, you know, factory rider, prima donna, anything like that. He's just a good kid from the Northwest. When he won that first moto at Thunder Valley, his mom was crying and the scenes. And then, you know, this weekend, even though Jett just had his season wrecked, he was there cheering Chance on. You could see him by the drop away after the start. I think the whole team enjoyed that. Joe Shimoda, you know, who's also starting to come into his own. All those guys, none of them could have been happier for Chance. The weird thing, though, is And I just realized this when you're talking about how cool it is to win your first national at RedBud. That's exactly what happened last year, but it was Haiden Deegan. And think about the year that Chance could have if he parallels what Haiden has done. That's pretty cool. It's he's come along maybe a little slower than Haiden, but he's one of those motocross combine kids, SX Futures kids, SX Next. Those kids are learning in ways differently than 5 years ago before we started doing these.
100%.
Yeah, and I know that people put a lot of emphasis on Loretta Lynn's and Mini-O's and some of those other events, but what we're trying to do and admittedly emulate what they're doing in MXGP.
Well, that's exactly what I was going to say there, Davey. Sure. Is you have to have Loretta Lynn's for the 50s, the 60s, the 85s, the 125s, and even the 250s. But there is a breaking point that you need to take them from Loretta Lynn's into the combine style system or into the Supercross Futures to get their feet wet in that arena. Because like you said, myself, Ricky, there's been a majority of us. This program's fairly new in the last, call it 3 to 5 years. The old style system, yes, it worked, but if you're trying to keep up with the times and produce better athletes, this is exactly what we need, because just going to Loretta Lynn's and then dropping us into, your first pro motocross race or Supercross, that gap and that ask for a rider that may not be ready mentally or a little bit physically, but he has the speed, is so huge. I think we're giving you guys are giving the platform that these riders need to develop. And like you said, Chance at the Combine last year, I believe, really didn't have a showing that a very respectable showing. And now we're back here at RedBud a year later, and he just has his first overall win.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair, Ryan. The commitment is there from Feld to do more of the SX Futures. They really think that they're seeing a rise in the talent. The commitment is there from MX Sports and the outdoor promoters to do more of these combines. The riders that participate love it. I think their families love it, and I think the OEMs love it. And I've said this before. The whole thing was Ryan Holiday's idea, and that was Kawasaki Team Green, where you graduated from 2005. Ryan was the one who said, "Hey, I grew up at Loretta Lynn's. I love it. I grew up going to Mini-O's, but we're not getting." As team managers and talent scouts, they're not getting enough time to really focus on one class of kids that are, is it time for him to go pro? Is it time not to go pro? And he suggested using a couple of the outdoor nationals to set up this combine thing. And my sister took the ball and ran with it. And here we are, Haiden Deegan, Daxton Bennick, Casey Cochran, and of course, Chance Hymas are all recent graduates of this. And they didn't go straight to the front of the pack. They still had some work to do, but it didn't ruin them either. And sometimes you see where someone is just so overwhelmed going from a 20+2 at Loretta Lynn's to 2 35-minute motos at Unadilla, and they never recover. So this is I think whether it was Haiden last year or Chance this year is proof that program is working, and we learned and evolved just like we have to do with everything else in the series.
Yep, exactly. So great job to Chance, phenomenal. Masterpool also with a 1.5 for second overall. I mean, really kind of, I don't know, coming into his own, finding himself. Like that's really kind of like it's a crazy story, where he came from, factory Yamaha, or Star Racing, losing that gig, then privateer racing, and then decides to go to the privateer 450, and now had an opportunity to jump on Mitch's bike, and look, and he's already got I think a win at High Point, a moto win at High Point. Now he's got a 1.5 here at RedBud for second overall. And then we got Joe, Shimoda coming in with a 5.2. Like the moto scores were kind of all over the place there, so they had to do some math there. I'm assuming, some quick math towards the end of that moto, who was going to end up with the overall. But Joe's coming on strong. kind of like he always does. I expected Joe to do this much earlier, much earlier. Also, bring it all the way back to Supercross. I expected him to be up there. So hopefully he keeps that run that he's got going on there, and with some better finishes.
Yeah. And I think the two best motos we've seen this year have been Ty versus Haiden, and Haiden, just grinding and taking it right down to the wire. But the fact that Ty is on Mitch's team, shout out to HBI, the Kawasaki privateer team that he was on for allowing him to take that opportunity literally at the 11th hour before the series opener. If you'd have told me that Thursday that he would win High Point on a pro circuit bike 1 month later, I just said, no way. And now he's rebuilt his entire career. And it's been cool to see. And I expect Joe to get an overall here sooner than later. But I have a feeling that, one of the things that Brian said to me yesterday is like, he wished TV would have known about the crash because he didn't want anyone to slag off on Haiden that he got tired, because Haiden doesn't get tired. And I was like, I agree. I mean,
calm down, Brian. We know
there's something wrong, but I think Haiden is coming loaded for bear to Spring Creek this week.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. He's got a look. He's in the driver's seat. Haiden is 42-point lead, I believe, is what it is. Let's see that. Yeah, Haiden right now with 276, Chance 42 down. Tom Biel 43. So right there, second and third, really close. And then it jumps down to Joe Shimoda with down 63. So, yes, he's still in it mathematically, but he needs to do some work. But yeah, that second and third place battle there is really tight. So it's gonna be interesting to see what happens there. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that was a 250 class. Really, really good talk there, Davey. So thank you. And we're gonna move right into the 450. Obviously, we debriefed on Jett's thumb injury, total bummer there. But we're gonna shift gears right into Chase Sexton. We're gonna call that into the Dunlop debate for that one. Man, it's just it was good to see him up front. He rode another phenomenal race. I know we had, there's I don't know if it's controversy, but people out there just kind of saying, well, how come he rides super well when Jett's not there, and vice versa, and things like that. But yeah, I think that I guarantee you he was bummed. There was part of him that was bummed when he found out Jett got hurt, but then there's also a part of him that was, I wouldn't use the word exciting, but that was looking forward to going to the races and really being able to, I think in this scenario, it's a lot easier for him to work on himself along with the motorcycle than trying to work on the motorcycle, work on himself and chase down Jett or try to beat Jett. Right. I mean, what do you think?
Well, I think that's fair. One thing, Ryan, your career, you went from Mitch's team on a 250 to Factory Cowie on a 450, but you were always on the same bike. Yeah. And for Chase to go from Honda to Red Bull KTM, everything is different. The shop is different. The workflow is different. The feedback is different. The chassis is different. I think that you saw that in Supercross. That he was still adapting, even though he was the reigning champion. He was having trouble getting used to that bike, but by the end, he was there. And I think that bodes well for not only Super Motocross in the fall, but Monster Energy Supercross next year. As far as Chase goes, outdoors, it's kind of been the same thing. I mean, he was great when he started last year on the Honda and gave Jett all he wanted, and then unfortunately got hurt. And so he missed a lot of the year, and now he's back and he's on a different team, and he's shown more than just flashes of brilliance. But he is up against a guy that like I said, has won 15 out of 16 nationals he's lined up on a 450. So I think, I think he's coming along, and it's probably not happening quick enough for some of his fans or some of his detractors. But the point is, that second moto on Saturday was a work of art. And you know, I know he got maybe a gift in the first moto when Hunter went down.
Yep.
But I think that you're going to see Chase really be competitive. You know, to win your home race is almost as cool as winning your first race. And so good for Chase, the whole Sexton family, and all the RedBud fans.
Yeah, no, he had said that. I think it was post race press conference. Like, you know, he's in his, you know, not word for word, but he's like, I don't know what can top this, you know, other than obviously championships and, you know, a Supercross or Motocross championship or SMX. But like, as for a sole race win, I mean, there's been a few for me, you know, like, you know, Bud's Creek, for example, was an amazing time for me to win, you know, like that. But like Chase to win at his home race with that crowd, how loud they were, pretty spectacular, you know, like just looking back and, like I said, watching the drone fly above the whole facility, and you could see the track, the amount of people. And when you're racing in front of fans like that, and that are super enthusiastic also, there's really no better feeling. It's really, really, really cool. And I think that, I do think he's doing better. He's right there. I think for like first moto, yes, Hunter went down. I think Hunter may have been able to hold him off potentially. But as a whole for that 450 class, now, Hector, can we throw up our points from where the point standings are in the 450? Yeah, we're looking right now. We have Chase Sexton with 260, Hunter Lawrence only 7 down, and Justin Cooper 48 down. So in my opinion, yes, we have still some guys mathematically in here, but with Hunter only 7 down, I think we're going to have one hell of a, you know, mid to end finish of our pro motocross series, down for this championship fight between those two. No slouches. I think Hunter's been getting phenomenal starts. That's one, you know, that's an area Chase needs to kind of work on. You know, if Hunter keeps just grabbing hole shots and putting himself in great positions, and Chase is always working forward or trying to work forward, you know, it's mistakes happen. You're racing against other guys. So I just think between those two, they each have different weaknesses and they each have different strengths also. I think we're going to have one hell of a race towards, you know, for this championship towards the end.
Well, I sure hope so. And I do think that Hunter kind of excels on these tracks that are coming up, but so does Chase. And you know, I know last year all the wins went to Jett, but you know, the year before he was giving Tomac all he wanted down the stretch. And you know, Hunter closed out the 250 title last year. It's hard to believe that he's a rookie in that class, and is, you know, literally was the points leader up until Saturday. He knows how to win a championship. He's already got a couple here. So between Chase, you know, and Hunter, that alone would be awesome. But I also think you're going to see a faster Plessinger. You're going to see a better Jason Anderson. I think Justin Cooper, I can't believe he hasn't gotten more hole shots. I peg him as, like, you know, maybe the best starter out there in that class. Now that Jett's not there, he could be real trouble because he's such a good sprinter. And so, yeah, I'm with you. I'm not overly hyping it. Yeah, we're missing Jett. Yeah, we're missing Eli. Yeah, we're missing, you know, Cooper Webb. But it's been a thrilling series so far, and that's not going to change. And just think when Eli and Cooper come back, you know, fingers crossed, Unadilla. That would be that's just going to add something to those last 3 rounds.
Oh, totally. Get some guys in that had, you know, obviously coming back from injury, have a point to prove. It just throws them, you know, throw them right into that mixing bowl, and how it affects also, you know, our overall point standings, you know, with guys like Eli and Cooper, and, you know, when or if they're able to jump back in there, you know, they're no slouches. They're going to be running up front right away, even from a thumb injury and injuries like that. I personally think time off of the motorcycle with an injury like all 3 of those they have had, doesn't matter what the injury is, but the time off the motorcycle, I've done it, you know, with my ACL. I was off for 4.5 months, and my practice bike mechanic, Casey, literally came up to me after my first ride of the day back on the motorcycle, being off for 4.5 months. And he goes, dude, I think you're faster today than you had been all through boot camp and training and riding and racing. For whatever reason, it can do that to a rider.
Yeah. You know, it's funny. I'm working on the Loretta Lynn program, and we're going through and figuring all these things out. And you won one Loretta Lynn's title. So let me ask you this question. How glad are you that you weren't that good as a kid, but then you became Ryan Villopoto?
Yeah, exactly. No, I mean, honestly, I look back and you know, if I can look back at interviews and videos and things like that, you know, already pro in my early 20s, and some of the things, or how I even viewed things, right? Like at that, I'm just like, man, I look back and I'll say it, like I was kind of you know, I wasn't pumped, and it's not necessarily I wasn't pumped on the sport, but just, you know, I look back now and what I've done and the what this sport has given to me and my family and everything else. Like, it's been one hell of a ride that has been nothing short of amazing for myself. So, you know, it all starts there at Loretta Lynn's. I went to Loretta's at, I think my very first year was 2002-ish, 2002, maybe, I think. I was in the 60 class. That Kawasaki Unishock is what we went there and rode. But it started there. And I think we went about 10 times after that until I was done. Right. We didn't have the combines. We didn't have the Supercross, futures and things like that. It was Loretta Lynn's and then on up to the pros. So, yeah, it's been a great career. Great. You know, I honestly, I love what I do. So it's been great. That leads me right into the quad lock question of the week. We have quad lock question is from Brandon Painter. Have you ever had a weekend where a single fan or crowd overall at an event affected your ability to perform for better or worse, whether that be getting into your head or helping you find that little extra something to push just a bit harder? So thank you to Quad Lock for and Brandon Painter. Get over to slide into the DMs over there with Curly JH there at Title 24. He'll get you all hooked up with the Quad Lock you know, goodie bag and stuff that we send out to our to all of our you know, people that are asking questions. So thank you for that. Honestly, for me, no, it never really affected me too much. I tried to, you know, surround yourself with good people, meaning, you know, your close knit group, you know, people that can take the brunt, take the burden from either fans or, you know, people wanting autographs or this or that, right? Like, hey, you know, there's certain things that you can do, like my uncle or my wife or my cousin that was my bus driver, you know, or even agents, right? Like those are your shields. Those are the people you use, and amongst everybody on the team also. But I can say that I would say that I'll go back to Minneapolis. I've told the story before on the show, and it didn't work into my favor. I think it worked, yes, against me in a way, but it was Minneapolis. I think I led 18 laps. I don't remember the year, but I led 18 laps. Dunge passed me on with 2 to go. It was his home race. It was like 60,000 fans, and the stadium it's one of the loudest, if not the loudest places I've ever raced in front of a crowd like that. So I think it worked into his favor, obviously. And he ended up winning that night. So, but no, as an athlete, as a racer, and Dave, you can probably know, you walked behind the line, but you know, behind the starting gate many times. When you look at these riders in the face, and I can only do it now, right? Because now I'm just a fan and a spectator, and I go there and enjoy myself. But man, it's like they can look through you, anybody and anything. Nobody's home when you're down on the line, or a lot of times even back in the pits, you know, because you're just so focused on the job and the task at hand. Partly because you want to win, partly because it's, we know the risk involved, right? Like in racing dirt bikes, and which is all fine and dandy, but those are all the things that you kind of do have to kind of block out. But then you just put yourself put yourself in that position of when you go to the line, you know why you're there.
Yeah, you know, racing is an incredibly difficult, dangerous, complicated thing that you have to be completely focused, like tunnel focused on. So a lot of times you don't hear that crowd. But sometimes, you know, to your point about Minnesota, that's that Minneapolis Classic with you and the Dunge, you could hear that, and it was crazy, and you know, I can remember Team USA, RedBud 2018 folding, just absolutely not showing up. And then 2022, same place, some of the same guys, at least with Eli, and absolutely rose to the occasion. And just both times the crowd was obviously partisan, fanatical Team USA, and it resonated and registered, you know, the second time, but that first time it didn't. And I can't explain why that was, or how a different Eli Tomac showed up, or you know, what was the dynamic that changed there. But it is like going to a home and an away game sometimes. You know, I live in a college town. I always go to the football games. We're better at home. There's no doubt. But as far as what it means to a racer, I've seen fans get in a racer's head before. You know, I harken all the way back to Jean-Michel Bayle when he was, you know, the Gulf War was starting up, and there was a real patriotic USA, and the French weren't really helping. And that's when they renamed French fries Freedom Fries. Well, none of this means a damn thing to Jean-Michel Bayle. He was so happy to be here. He had American flags on his bike. But it got to him because they were actively rooting for Bradshaw and Stanton and against him. And it got to him the first year. It motivated him the second year. And that's, you know, so I've seen it happen all the time. I don't know if it made a difference to Chase this weekend. I think he was going to win that second moto, hell or high water, but it was cool that the fans got to enjoy it with him.
Oh, I 100% agree. It was a great weekend that we got to, you know, watch. At least me and you got to watch from our couch and watch that RedBud experience. So thank you, like I said, to all the crew that puts that race on and gets that place looking, you know, top notch. But bringing up, you know, Millville, or, you know, Minnesota. Well, we head to Millville this next weekend. I'm another phenomenal, great track. You know, I think it races well. It can also be very, very hot. So we could potentially see some high humidity, high heat, which obviously plays an effect, which could have you know, an end result for some of our riders, not all of them, but Spring Creek, Millville National, just, looking forward to that. It's, you know, track's awesome. I think I think one of my best experiences at Millville was, I think it was 2007, Ben Townley, myself. I don't remember if it was first or second moto. I think you were there, Davey, also, where I just couldn't break Ben. I couldn't break him. I was leading, could not break him. He was all over me. I decided to let him by in one of the turns to follow, to see what, where, how I could do something better. Massive gamble on my part, you know, because what if I couldn't have got him back, or I lost the overall based on, you know, I can promise you what my dad would have told me was, that was a dumb decision to do that. You should have just held him off and let him go around you. I didn't hear that because I was able to pass him back, win the overall that day. But Millville is always a great track. You know, we have I'm drawing a blank now with the promoter, track owner.
The Martin family.
Yes, Martins. Yes, Martins. Yeah.
I can see where it's in transition, because since he retired, Troll Train is becoming a promoter train.
There we go. That's where I was going with it. Yes. Yeah.
He's really enjoying being on the other side of the starting gate. I'm sure he misses being out there, but he's going to have that place ship shape. You know, Johnny and Greta are still there. I'm sure that Jeremy's helping out, and also Jeremy's sister. You know, it's a real family affair up there. And you know, it's one of those things where people don't understand. If you've never been to, say, Washougal, you have no idea how big it is. If you've never been to Spring Creek, if you've never been to Mount Morris, you know, High Point, Southwick was massive this year. And it's like, it's a big part of the, you know, the passage of summer or the rites of passage or whatever. And the fact that they're all growing and the competition is getting deeper and you know, it's a good time for Alex Martin to be on the other side of the starting gate, and we could use his expertise, having, you know, spent, you know, 15 years in the trenches as a pro. Yeah, it would be a great event, and they've been hit by rain a few times recently. This year it looks like no excuses. So
good.
Expect a RedBud size crowd.
Oh, I hope so. You know, it's a good place to watch from. Actually, it's one of my, I don't know if the track is my favorite, but I had an experience, I guess it was last year for the PulpMX Ride Day. I was able to actually go out. I hadn't been back to Millville since retiring, since racing professional. Obviously, as you know better than anybody, Davey, when you pull in Saturday morning to a national, or Friday, you know, Friday or Saturday, you're like, holy cow, look at all the trucks. But when you pull into these facilities when nobody's there, you're like, wow, this is beautiful. This is really cool. You know, it's quiet, it's peaceful. Like, I got to fish that creek finally for the first time ever at the PulpMX Ride Day. Even caught some fish in it. So just had a real blast. And yeah, Alex being, I just had heard that's where I was going with that, is that he's kind of taking over the family business there and gonna be a promoter. I don't know what trench is deeper though, Davey, being a pro in the trenches or being a promoter in the trenches.
Well, I was having a ball just being a magazine guy, but I can tell you that it has its challenges.
It's got its ups and downs.
Yeah. Speaking of being back in the trenches, real quick, you look like you had a blast at Mammoth Mountain.
I did. Yes. Mammoth was awesome. I haven't been back in 20 years. Facility was great. You know, obviously there's not very, I mean, I know GNCC, which is another one that I want to go check out, which is snowshoe, obviously at a resort, at a mountain resort in mountain towns. So the closest thing for, you know, motocross that we have is Mammoth Mountain, at least out here on the West Coast. And it's just that kids love it. And we did some fishing, you know, you get the mountain vibes, you get up there. It's beautiful. It's only 6 hours from home, so it's close to get there. But I had a blast racing, went 2-2 on the day. I got up against Cole Martinez in the 25 plus pro class. So I was stoked. I walked away with no raspberries on my arms, you know, because the place is pretty slippery and hard. So I was a little, and at 8,500 feet, right? So that was the other thing. I was hacking up a lung half the day after riding.
Believe it or not, I've never been to Mammoth Mountain. It's just always the time of year. It was either the Blackwater 100 or Loretta Lynn's regionals, and now the High Point National. But I always wanted to get one of those little bear trophies, but I don't. I think that window has closed. But
industry class, maybe we'll talk to Myron, you know, promoter to promoter, and we'll get you an industry class.
Yeah, it'd have to be a very specific industry class, like college graduates with 1 pro point and a really good ability to spell and be 58 years old.
Oh, perfect. All right. Perfect.
I can beat Mathis still. I know that.
Ooh, yeah, that's probably a good race right there. So, well, Davey, I just want to say thank you for coming on the show, discussing all of this, going through the Millville, going through the RedBud. You know, I'll call you if I need you again, buddy.
All right. Glad to do it. And again, you know, we can learn so much from every one of these races, and even while they're improving, we got work to do. And believe me, we're doing it. And I'm all ears for suggestions. If anyone wants to throw something out, it's dc@mxsports.com.
I think you just opened a can of worms.
It's always been open. I'm an open book when it comes to questions and suggestions and ideas. And
Yep.
That's, like I said, I've been on the phone since Friday evening when I realized there was this, chain of mistakes or situations, and yeah, it's up to us to fix it. And again, RedBud was an exceptional event, start to finish, but that one little thing, is kind of robbing the conversation of just how good of an event it was.
Well, it happens. I think, look, that's a byproduct of the event. Like I said, stuff's going to happen, and the event went off without anything, major and going, happening. And we had great weather, didn't rain, it was just, and we had great racing. So, yeah, from that point on, we'll see you guys next week. Thanks for listening. Get your podcasts wherever you download all your podcasts, Apple, Spotify. You can get over to Motorsports on NBC.com and the YouTube. Peacock, we also are on Peacock, so you can get over and watch it all on Peacock. Like I said, or Motorsports on YouTube, or download them any place you get your major podcasts. So, and that's we have Motorsports on NBC this week. We have SMX Insider at 2 p.m. Eastern. Jason Wygant and Jason Thomas. Saturday at 10:30 Eastern. Pro Motocross race day live qualifying 1:30 Eastern. Pro Motocross, all 4 motos on Peacock. Spring Creek, Millville, going to be an awesome time. I'll be watching that. 2:30 p.m. or sorry, 2:30 Eastern time. Let's see, NASCAR Xfinity Series, Pocono. So that's going to be a really good one too. Also to watch if you're into 4-wheel racing. And 8 p.m. Eastern time, NTT IndyCar Series, Iowa, Race 1. So get over and check those out if you're looking for something to watch. And here we have Sunday, 11 Eastern time, IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship, Canada. That's going to be a really good one. Also, I mean, the NBC just has so much sports to watch. I mean, or racing in general. But yeah, 12 Eastern, NTT IndyCar Series, Iowa Race 2, and also last 2 p.m. Eastern, NASCAR Cup Series, Pocono. So the heavy weekend of racing, of all forms of racing. I know what I'm going to be watching. It's going to be Millville. It's probably not going to be those 4-wheel races at this point because my priority is going to be there. And that's what, actually, I'll be at Budds Creek this weekend. I'm heading to Budds Creek for the Blue Crew Yamaha Invitational for the super finale over in England for the MXON. So I'll be at Budds Creek. I leave Thursday. So get out, come check us out there if anybody's in the area.
Well, if I wasn't going to be at Spring Creek, I'd be there with you. But
I know, and then you'll be at Budds Creek not too long after that. So
absolutely
great facility. So yeah, thank you guys. Thanks to all of our listeners. Davey, thank you once again. Really appreciate filling in for our good buddy RC, and we'll get you back on here eventually soon, buddy. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi folks, Lee Diffie from NBC Sports here. If you truly enjoyed what you just watched, you can get more news, interviews, and highlights by subscribing to the Motorsports on NBC YouTube page. You can get it all, so go for it.